So welcome, everybody. We're excited to have our webinars back on track. We took a couple months off towards the end of last year, but we're back with a topic that I think is going to land really well with individuals and practices who are just starting to think about how they want to integrate connected health into their practice. And we are honored today to have Sachin Patel and his health coach, Alice Mojebski. Did I get it right, Alice? I think, was I in the ballpark? Give it to me one more time.
Mojebski.
Mojebski.
Awesome.
Thank you. So, and we have Dr. Lemansky here, who's also on our webinars regularly. And we also have our head of sales, TJ Anderson, on the line. So TJ is going to be manning the Q&A and the chat. If anyone has questions, if you don't have questions, he'll throw questions at you. So TJ, do you want to do a quick hello before we transition over to the main presentation?
You bet. Of course. Thank you, Dave. And hello, everyone. Thanks for hopping on live with us. As Dave mentioned, TJ Anderson, I'm a head of new accounts, and I work with lots of our practices that we help support the rollout of our platform for. So you might hear a little bit about an opportunity to connect for a one-on-one call towards the end of this. And I'll be your guy to hop on and we can do a little strategy session, learn a little bit more about your business and how you're using the Oura ring now, if at all, and then some. So anyways, I'm excited to connect further today over the next 50 minutes in the chat box. Let your questions come on in.
Thank you, sir. So I think the topic is pretty clear, but let's just reiterate. It's really about how to integrate the Oura ring into the practice. And Sachin and I had a conversation on this recently on our podcast, Data Driven Health Radio. And the way that Sachin and Alice have operationalized the ring into the practice is, along with Heads Up, is really, really ingenious. And it's really a gold standard, I think, for practices who are starting to figure out how they want to integrate and operationalize connected health. So we're grateful for their time here today, and we're going to dive into how Sachin and team are using the ring in their day-to-day practice. We're going to look at how Alice, as the coach, is using Heads Up and Oura to provide feedback, positive feedback, run reports, so people can see how well they're doing on their protocol. Also to figure out why certain people may be responding, whereas others don't. Really having the objective data to dial things in and use that in the coaching context. And then Dr. Lemansky and I will just be peppering Sachin and Alice with questions on how they've rolled this out. So that's our topic here. Just in terms of agenda, a slide issue here. Here we go. We'll do some formal introductions in just a second, and then we'll talk for maybe 20 or 30 minutes about how Sachin and Alice have built this program and rolled it out, and how they're using the ring and HRV and sleep and other biometrics in their day-to-day. So we'll spend about 20 or 30 minutes there. And then what I'm going to do is just take five or 10 minutes and actually do a live demo of how this all actually works in practice. So you'll actually see real data coming in from different clients, obviously not Sachin's data, but it's data from our test accounts. So we'll show you exactly end to end how this all works. And I may ask Alice to comment as I'm going through the demo just on how she's doing this with her clients. So we'll do a live demo. I've got a sneak peek into some features that we haven't released yet, but are coming soon and are very relevant to this discussion. Specifically, how you can start doing analysis of different cohorts of clients and starting to look at results across a cohort. Our product today is very good at individual analysis. We're going to do a sneak peek into some of the cohort analysis that's coming. And then we'll do a summary, quick Q&A. And then the next steps, as TJ mentioned, if this is of interest, or if you're interested in integrating other devices into your program, we'll provide a link where you can schedule a discovery call, and we can walk you through best practices, what works, what doesn't, what devices we support, and give you some guidance on how to roll this out. So with that said, let's just start with some introductions, and I'll start us off. I'm Dave Korsunski. I'm the founder CEO here at Heads Up, and have been passionately building this product to provide better analysis tools for health over the past 5 years. And I've been grateful to bring on some fantastic teammates, including TJ, who you've already met, and Dr. Lemansky. Doc, you want to do a quick hello for us, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dave. Great to be on with everybody. So I'm John Lemansky. I'm the Chief Medical Officer with Heads Up. I'm a practicing physician, internal medicine, and I do a lot of wellness, preventative health, and use Heads Up as my platform. So really looking forward to this conversation because I think Oura is a huge part of what I do. So love to pepper Sachin and Alice with some questions. So looking forward to it.
Thanks, Doc. Sachin, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Heads Up, and all the amazing work that you're doing. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. It means a lot to me to know that you're here to up-level your practice and to, up-level the lives of everyone you touch and give people an opportunity to hold themselves accountable, but also hold yourself accountable, because that's what wearables do. It's a way to assess if what we're doing is working. And I love that all of you players are here to learn how you can continue to improve and up-level your services and offerings to your clients. So thank you all for being here. And thanks, Dave, for the wonderful intro. I know that we do our best, and I'll humbly share as much as we can, but I want everyone to know that we're learning, we're innovating, we're trying to do our best, and I'm here to learn as well. I know there's going to be some questions that come in. I know John and Alice are going to share some cool stuff, and TJ and Dave, I always learn some new stuff hanging out with you guys. So this is just as much as beneficial to me as I hope it is for everyone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Sachin. And Alice, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. And I'm super excited again to learn and to grow from the information and build on what I already know. But I am Alice Mojebski. I am one of the health coaches leading the Living Light Reset program at the Living Proof Institute. And one of the ways we've been able to level up our health coaching and our health programs, is by integrating something like Heads Up Health and using the Oura ring, where we're able to get that objective data, and it's super unique and personalized to every single person. So it's been really helpful. It's been an amazing tool, especially with the backdrop of what's been going on with the world, to stay in touch with somebody on such a personal basis on the daily as we're coaching them through their health journey. So I'm super excited to learn more, and I'm super excited for everybody that's tuned in as well to learn and grow with us.
Thank you, Alice. Well, with those intros, I think we've got a fantastic team here to lead this discussion. And what I'd like to do next is really just dive into the feature discussion here. And what I'd like to do, Sachin and Alice, we typically keep these conversational and Q&A format. So, and John, please also jump in with questions here. But first, I'd like to start off with question/comment to Sachin. And it was something, Sachin, you mentioned on the podcast we did a couple of weeks ago, which really stuck with me. And you mentioned that you're a practitioner you're based in Canada, and there are certain limitations in Canada of what types of labs can be ordered. A lot of the labs you'd want to run are not even necessarily available. My sister's a naturopath in Winnipeg, and a lot of the specialized tests are just super hard to get. Even ordering tests in general is hard. And you're also working with clients in other parts of the world, other countries, United States and abroad. And so each country in terms of ordering labs has its own intricacies. But you said something that was really brilliant. You asked yourself a question, which is, okay, so how do I work around the system, and how do I game the system? And what you said was, I wanted to find a biomarker I could use with clients that did not require the lab testing. I didn't run into that roadblock. And you ultimately looked at HRV as the most indicative biomarker that was commercially available to everybody. And you rolled out with that. as a proxy indicator, basically,
Mhm.
for overall health. And that, I couldn't agree more, first of all, with that approach, which is using that as kind of like the leading indicator, if you will. And so it was just a really brilliant insight, the way you shared that as a way to work around it. And obviously there's more work to do with each individual, but could you just like elaborate a little bit on what I said on how this all came to be and how that just played out, how you recognize that this was an opportunity?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So, one of the things that I like to do is innovate and think maybe 1, 2, 3, even 5 to 10 years ahead of the curve. And being a chiropractor in Ontario, there's certain limitations. Even being a medical doctor in Ontario, there's certain limitations as far as what labs you can order and the scrutiny under which the scrutiny that you might face if you are ordering, labs that may be deemed non-essential. So
Sure.
what we decided to do is figure out how can we create and identify a marker that we can non-invasively test, and how can we find a tool that provides that analysis for us. And that's what we loved about the Oura ring specifically, because with most wearable tech and many consumers nowadays are really sensitive to EMF, or they're sensitive to the concepts of EMF. And so we wanted to find a tool that would have an airplane mode, which the Oura ring does, and something that would provide us with not just the insights like HRV, but also provide us with other key indicators, such as respiratory rate, such as heart rate, such as deep sleep and REM sleep, because these are key factors, lifestyle factors that you can't measure using blood work. So even if you had access to lab work, you wouldn't be able to identify these key factors. And what we've realized is that when we can shift somebody's sympathetic nervous system into or autonomic nervous system rather, from a sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state, to me, that's the key indicator for healing in every single cell, organ, and tissue. So then the quest became, what is the key biomarker that can help us identify resilience in the nervous system and the tone of the nervous system? And that's where we landed on HRV. So having, the ability to measure that, having the ability for the client to check in on a daily basis, not just on a quarterly basis, if they're lucky, they're getting the right labs, if maybe once a year or once a quarter, but on a daily basis. So they could see nuanced lifestyle changes and how it affects them. They could see, how does mouth tape affect my sleep and my HRV? How does the timing of my meals affect my HRV and exercise? How does the exposure that I have to artificial lighting or my bedtime, how does that affect this key marker that is a indicator of healing of every single cell, tissue, organ, and system in my body? So that's why we landed on the Oura ring, and that's why we landed on HRV. And of course, HRV measured through the Oura ring is a passive metric. So it's something that you just go to sleep and it does the measurement for you. At first, just so everyone knows, we were focusing on HRV, but we're using the heart math at first. And the problem with the heart math is you actually have to do it, right?
It's not passive.
It's not passive. So it's kind of like lifting weights, right? You've got to actually get yourself, sit yourself down, connect the device, and then actually go through the breathing, and then you'd get a score. But so we used to actually include a heart math device with our clients because it is a powerful tool. We're not going to deny that. However, it's an active tool versus the Oura ring, which is more passive. And so what we found was the uptake with the heart math was not that great, even though it was given to them as part of their program. However, with the Oura ring, the uptake is pretty much 100%. So we're collecting this data on a daily basis. And now what it also provides us with is a platform that's decentralized to essentially allow us to research the information that's coming in. So that's where Heads Up Health came in. We were giving Oura rings out to our clients, prior to using Heads Up Health, but we didn't have a place to amalgamate this information. Sure. So it was like old school, like, hey, send us a screenshot of your trends or send us a screenshot of your Oura ring score and include that in your journal. But now they don't have to do any of that. So it's a much better user experience. And, when you're trying to research your methodology, it's so much better if the data just comes streaming in from the sources instead of us having to chase it down. So that's, kind of a high level, answer to what you just asked.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the passive data collection, and one of the trends I think that is most promising is as the sensors available to individuals continues to advance, is more metrics are becoming passively collected, which is just awesome. Like being able to wear a CGM and have passively collected glucose, being able to wear, Apple Watch 7 or any Apple Watch, and you have passively collected resting heart rate and SpO2 and other things. So the more we can collect passively, the better. And it's very simple. I wear the ring at night. I wake up, the data's there. People just look at it in the Oura app, and that's really all the client has to do. As long as they're doing that, the data comes back to yourself and Alice and the rest of the team. And that's where a lot of what I would call maybe more of the advanced interpretation and coaching around said data happens. So I'd like to get Alice's comments here in a second, but before we do that, John, I'd love to just hear from you on the medical side about expanding on what Sachin said on how we can use this as a leading indicator into the health of the overall system, the tone of the nervous system, the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, especially if you start seeing baselines on people and you start learning where their baselines are. So what's coming up for you on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack from what Sachin said. I think as we move forward in this kind of hybrid model of medicine, of health, of wellness, you need to have something that is cost effective. So, the Oura Ring from a price point, I think is reasonably priced so people can afford it. The passive collection of data, as Sachin mentioned, I think is extremely important because compliance is very hard just on your day-to-day life to begin with. Now to add more requirements on people to tell them that they're going to get healthy tends to be a challenge. So now you have a ring, it's aesthetically pleasing, so it's not a huge device. You don't have to do anything, it's just automatically updated. And then I think one of the most important things that Sachin said is this balance of the autonomic system, which is affected by obviously so many factors, but the Oura Ring really captures a lot of that data. So obviously the HRV is a big component, but it captures your sleep data. So that's going to give you a big insight into why your HRV may be off one way or the other. One thing he didn't mention though was the temperature. So,
deviation.
Yeah, temperature deviation, especially, not just with COVID per se, but just in general, any sort of infection or autoimmune disorder, anytime you have a flare up of something that is inflammatory, you can see maybe a little bit of a head start with the temperature deviation, either way, plus or minus. So I think that's extremely valuable. And then, obviously incorporate it into Heads Up and being able to correlate that data with other data that you're collecting, such as CGM data or, ketone or glucose data. It allows us to have a bigger picture. And I think one of the issues with traditional medicine, the way it's been practiced, as Sachin mentioned, is you get a lab, and then 3 months or 6 months later, you get another set of labs. That's great for that, snapshot in time. And obviously, if there's something dramatically abnormal, you need to address it. But it's a very fragmented way of doing medicine versus now when you have so much available data, you have this kind of linear timeline. So you can see things in real time. If you have a way of interacting with your patients or your clients, you can also have them add input. So not only does it empower you as the provider, but also as the client, they are also empowered. And that really builds a relationship that I think is important between the practitioner and the patients or clients to allow the development of a plan going forward, because the one size approach doesn't work in health and wellness. You need to be able to individualize things that you're doing. So it just not only is a wealth of information, but with so many wearable devices and so many ways of inputting data, you also have to realize which one am I going to use, because you can almost get like an overload of data as well. And so, yeah, I mean, I would just reiterate a lot of things that Sachin mentioned. And I think for the money and for the information you get, it's probably one of your best devices out there.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, $300, something like that. And it's going to crank out awesome data every single day.
Mhm.
And, $300 doesn't, I order my labs cash in the US. and you don't get much for 300, and it's once or twice a year. So when you amortize that, you amortize the 300 over a few years of data, which you're going to basically be able to get, it works out to be a super cost-effective way to do health monitoring, and probably better than having even like semi-annual labs and other expensive testing. Obviously, that stuff's important and it's case by case, but just as a generalized way of staying connected, I think for the money, it's fantastic. And I think that's actually a great opportunity to tee up Alice. And Alice, maybe you could comment on what Sachin and John mentioned, which is the check-ins and the relationship that you can build when someone knows that on the other end, if something is moving in the wrong direction, you'll be able to counsel them. You'll be able to help them understand why the numbers look as good as they do when things are moving in the right direction. And you'll be able to learn people's individual baselines. I have several close friends and family members that I'm connected to on my portal. And you may find this as well, but when you start to know someone, you start to just instinctively know where their baseline is. And you can also instinctively just quickly look at someone and see that they're way off. And so you use that as an opportunity to coach. And so it would be great to hear from you on how you're using this day to day from the human aspect of it and relating to people using this data.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And it's really made it extremely easy and simple to connect with people. And the awesome thing about the Oura Ring is that all the data is objective. So, whether or not I believe, that they should be sleeping at 10 p.m. versus, 1 a.m. that they're sleeping at right now or currently, their body is speaking out, and the Oura Ring's interpreting that information, interpreting those stats, and acting as a little health coach behind the scenes, in the times where I can't be with the person, typically when they're sleeping or, going about their everyday, it acts as that little health coach and that little reminder to be like, hey, based on, and especially after you've been wearing it for a couple of weeks, the Oura Ring gets to know you very well, additionally as well. So it starts to suggest, certain windows where it's optimal for you to go to sleep. It's certain times where you should be going out and getting fresh air, going out and getting a walk. If you've been sitting too long, giving you that little nudge to get up, stretch, get some fresh air, go get some sunlight. So it's been really amazing to speak to the results, the objective data, and to also walk patients and clients through the actual Heads Up Health platform and being able to show them, the different percentages and how things were able to shift from 1 week to the next or 1 month to the next, with the different lifestyle factors and the lifestyle changes they were able to implement. So they can see the data right then and there. So there's no convincing, there's no anything other than teaching and other than learning, and getting to know your body and getting to really be in tune with your body and understand, if you're feeling off, okay, let me check in and see my REM sleep, how my REM sleep was doing this past week. How can I get that up? Have I been really stressed out? Is that showing up in my HRV scores? So then you're able to really create that delicate relationship with your body. And you're able to understand it, even moving into everyday life. Let's say you don't have access to a health coach, after a few weeks or a few months, or you're finished your program or whatnot, you're still able to take all of those tools and apply them into your everyday life and, be your own empowered doctor, be your own empowered coach, so it's been really awesome to be able to show people the trends after they've made certain changes, and how that's able to positively reflect on their body.
I love it. And generally, Alice, what's the response from people when you start working with them on this data? That is quite honestly real time. And it does reveal a lot of information about a person's lifestyle. And that can be comfortable or uncomfortable, I imagine, in some situations. So just anecdotally, is there any generalized thoughts you can share on that?
Yeah, for sure. I think that being able to see the actual metrics and the actual markers is very motivating, and people tend to take their health a lot more seriously, because
Awesome.
there's no shortage of information that's on the internet, but without actual numbers, without objective data, you don't think you're that person. You don't think you need to change. You think your sleep is fine. You feel great. You've normalized your energy levels to what they currently are, and you don't know that possibly better is out there for you.
I love
Whereas
that.
if you're sitting there with the numbers, with a health coach allowing to interpret that data, you're a lot more motivated and you're a lot more likely to take it seriously in my experience.
Yeah, and just even speaking personally and with some of my close family members, I know where my numbers are when I'm absolutely optimal. And it just gives me a baseline that I can strive towards. And it's never going to stay there 100% of the time. It's going to ebb and flow and up and down. But you have, first of all, I love what you said about awareness. I think the biggest thing with a lot of the sensor technology and the devices available to consumers is getting that feedback increases the awareness they have with their body and their choices. And even just that awareness and those choices alone is a win overall for the health of society. The more instant feedback we can give people, the more awareness, the more insights, the more they can instinctively connect that back to a choice they made, I think is really where the big promise lies. And then having individuals like yourself and Sachin that then incorporate that into the program and into the coaching just really takes it to the next level. So I love the way you guys are doing that. One question I wanted to ask you, Sachin, that I think would be really helpful to people online here is the logistics of how you've operationalized this, because the ring is needing to be sized to an individual's finger. It's not like you can just keep them in stock and ship them out like a glucometer. There's an extra step in the process that's required. And so there's some logistics around that. And also there's a cost associated with that. And you have an opportunity to include that with the program or perhaps pass on all or a portion to the client. So could you maybe just share how you've operationalized it from that point of view? New person comes on, you got to get them set up, you got to get the ring going. Alice presumably comes in at some point and gets it all connected to Heads Up, make sure the data is flowing. So can you guys just share like how you've solved that in its, at least in its current iteration for your program?
Yeah, sure. So it is a two-step process. You do have to get the ring sized. It's not a one size fits all thing like a watch might be, or like a glucometer might be. So we do have to, take that step into account. So what we do is we actually have a business relationship with Oura. And what they've done is they've set up a back-end platform for us, and they ship us the actual sizing kits. And those sizing kits are included in our new patient or new client packages. And what we've done is we've actually included some instructions on the inside of the packaging with a QR code. So they scan that QR code with their phone, enter the appropriate, or they can go to the website and they enter the appropriate information. That information comes to Alice, and then through our backend portal, we send them the appropriate ring size and color of their choice. So it is a relationship that we have with them that facilitates that. For many of you, if you're not using an Oura ring, then what I would suggest is just start using your own. Start taking a look at the data, get one for yourself, your spouse, maybe your staff. That's how it started with us. We got one for all of our staff members a few years ago at one of our events, and we absolutely loved it and said, hey, how can we incorporate this into what we're doing? Reached out to one of my contacts at Oura, and they were able to set us up with a business account. Now, if you do want to do that, there is a minimum number of rings that you have to order annually, which is 50. So for most practitioners, that should be, pretty doable. But that is a minimum amount that they require. And then I can't say that they'll do this for you, but I just want to let you know that there is a slight discount from the retail price. It's not much, but there is a slight discount that we get, and we are then including that into our programs with our clients. Now, just like with anything, like there's supply chain issues. Sometimes ring sizes may not be available. Right now, Oura is actually in the process of moving their back-end headquarters. So there's been some, hiccups in the process for us, but those should be smoothed out here pretty shortly. So we've had to go in and order the rings retail for some of our clients who wanted the rings immediately and couldn't wait, for Oura to get their back end together. So sometimes you're going to have to do that too. So you just have to prepare and go with the wind. And there was a bit of a issue as well because they switched from generation 2 to generation 3, and some of that's behind us now. But just to kind of be totally transparent, sometimes when there's changes in tech or when there's new hardware that's being released, you have to be prepared as a business to make sure that you're creating a smooth process for yourself internally, but then also for your clients as well. And then once they get the ring, then they would meet with Alice as part of their coaching session, and then Alice would walk them through the process of setting up the ring. And maybe Alice, you can shed some light on what that process looks like.
Yeah, for sure. So I kind of just walk them through how to place the order. Of course, when they're going through our program, a lot of people tend to release quite a bit of weight. So I always urge them to get it sized on their ring finger, since that tends to be a bit of a smaller finger, so they can move it. The cool thing is that you don't have to wear it on a specific finger, so you can move it as needed, especially if you are doing a weight release based program. So then I just have them order it, kind of get them to understand, when the ring should be coming in based on times, based on availability, like Sachin mentioned, if there's anything going on that's going to derail. And then once they do have the ring, of course, they log into the Oura app, and then that's when I send them over the headsuphealth. And during some of our consults, I bring up and I pull up actually a report, which is what you mentioned we'll be going through over today as well. So I just kind of open up that report after they've been doing the program for, a week or two at that point, just to get them familiar with the different biomarkers, what they should be paying attention to, what each of them means, the importance of them, so that they can take it seriously. And they can also get really excited to know that they're finally getting those numbers, and they'll have that objective data. And it's kind of that fun starting point, and they can see how much it changes throughout the duration of the program.
Yeah, I love it. We are going to dive into those progress reports. So we'll show everybody how that works. And I know, Alice, you guys also have some pretty nice documentation that you provide to clients as well, like step-by-step instructions on how to get a lot of that stuff set up as well. So I presume you send that over, and then if there's issues connecting and stuff like that, you can support. So I think is that correct, that you've obviously come up with an because there's more than one system. There's lots of parts and pieces to this. So yeah. Do you send the instructions to each client, or are you onboarding them all one by one, or are you only jumping in when they have a problem?
So what we do as a part of the program is that we have additional modules. So we have a module program with 15 different modules, and the first one being their Oura Ring overview. So we get them to watch that. We get them to get familiar with that video, of course, just for the sake of everyone's time to not constantly repeat the same information. We've automated it. So it's the first module that they receive, so that they can have clarity as to what to expect and where to look for all that information, the different stuff to incorporate. So yeah, that's how we incorporate it in our program.
Cool. Hey, Dave, can I quickly interject with some quick housekeeping? Just so everyone's aware, if I can have everyone's attention, unfortunately, I'm not able to access the Q&A. So if you did have a specific question, please use the actual chat box. So I'll be able to answer questions, and then we'll circle back at the end with some of the questions, which I'm sure we'll have some time at the end for. And the second thing to mention, we have a couple quick questions for you too. So I'm going to just launch a short, quick poll asking if you use an Oura Ring and a few other questions. So look for that as well. We'd love to hear from you guys. I'll go ahead and launch that right now. So
thanks, TJ. Yeah, so please put questions in the chat and not the Q&A per TJ's request.
Sweet. So
that all makes really good sense. It's great the way you guys have, like you said, Sachin, you don't just wake up and roll this out and nail it on the first attempt. So I'm sure you guys have iterated to the point where, like, okay, we got to have the sizing kits in stock. Let's make some videos. Let's have as much standardized as possible, and that took some iteration. But it seems like once you get the data flowing and get going, it's all working really well. What and Sachin, you and I connected recently. I was fortunate enough to be up in the Toronto area, and we we got to meet up there and talk shop for a little while. And it'd be cool if you could share a little bit about some of the best practices that you and Alice roll out. You've mentioned anecdotally talking to clients about circadian rhythm, what time they go to bed, how they control lighting in the environment, how they control meal timing. These are not things that are part of the conventional healthcare paradigm, to talk to a patient about like lighting at home and like what time you're finishing your meals, and doing alternative things like sauna or cold exposure or psilocybin or other types of modalities, because we're outside the traditional paradigms here. And this is an area I'd love John to chime in on as well, because he has incredible expertise here. So Sachin and John, maybe for the next few minutes, you could just share some of the hacks, for lack of a better word, that you use commonly and that you see will help to move the needle in a certain direction. And Alice, if you have other things as well, things you commonly start with that really move the needle for people, which ones come up for you first and foremost? Sachin, maybe you could start.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's three things that we start every client on. One is making sure they're breathing correctly. So that's something they can change within seconds. So we talk about oral posture, we talk about nasal breathing, we talk about mouth taping. Second thing we talk about is circadian rhythm. So using lighting, either from the sun, natural lighting, but also interior lighting to modify their, obviously their circadian rhythm, to modulate their hormones, to get them making more melatonin and reducing their cortisol production, wearing blue blockers, right? Using red lamps, things like that. And then we also focus on sleep. So those are the three big pillars for us. And of course, surrounding that is meal timing, is, what time you're going to bed, is what time are you waking up, and what's your exposure like to sunlight in the morning, cold exposure, regulating the temperature of your bedroom. That makes a big difference in our deep sleep. So there's all these other things, these nuanced details that we go over with our clients that you can't measure with lab work. But will show up if you're doing them correctly. It will show up on your Oura ring. So we're able to demonstrate to them the value of these changes that they're making, and then also show them, like another example is like when people drink alcohol. So a lot of people will use wine, for example, to wind down if they've had a stressful day or a stressful week. And now they can see how that's actually destroying their sleep, how it's negatively affecting their HRV scores, how it's, perhaps they're sleeping, but they're not truly resting and restoring themselves. So those are, some of the few things that, I could talk about this for hours, but those are the things, the key needle movers that we try to focus on is breathing right, sleeping right, and reconnecting and reestablishing a healthy circadian rhythm.
Love it.
Yeah,
Doc?
like Sachin said, we could talk about this forever. But I think, the pillars of any good medical or health practice is going to be pretty much the same at this point. So sleep obviously is extremely important. Circadian rhythm, as Sachin mentioned, is extremely important. Food and food timing, and then stress. I like HRV because it gives you an insight into the overall kind of balance of the individual. And then going from there, it's really determining what's actually causing that imbalance. And usually it's all those things at once. So a lot of the patients I work with are a mess to begin with. And I have found through trial and error that initially I would start with a lot. So I would say, okay, we're going to change your sleep pattern. We're going to change your diet. We're going to start making you do, cold immersion. We're going to throw sauna at you. We're going to throw red light. And they are so overwhelmed that it doesn't work. They usually will fall off. So I think the simplicity that Sachin mentioned is important, where you start with maybe 2 or 3 things that are extremely important. So sleep, by and large, is the most important thing. And probably at this point, it's a little bit more recognized, I think, with like Matthew Walker coming out with a lot of research. But I think sleep is still underrated in terms of the importance. And I have a lot of clients or patients who will tell me, yeah, I sleep great. And then you put an Oura ring on them, and yeah, they might sleep for 7-8 hours. They take, sleeping pills, and their deep and REM sleep are just shot. So it's all junk sleep.
Zero. Yep.
Yeah. And then the next day their cortisol levels are higher, they're hungrier, they're eating carbs, and then they go into this vicious cycle. So I focused initially on sleep, really focusing on looking at the Oura data, the HRV feedback, the deep and REM sleep, and then also the awakenings, like how many times are they waking up at night? Because a lot of that can give you insight into maybe why they're not tapping into some of the deeper and REM sleep. And then stress reduction. So a lot of my patients are like CEOs, entrepreneurs, and they're stressed like crazy. So really reducing stress either through meditation, exercise, grounding, being outside in the sun. I'm in Puerto Rico, so we're in the sun 24/7. Cold water therapy and sauna work. But all that really will be reflective in the HRV and the sleep score. And then obviously nutrition for me is a huge component. So you can also use HRV data with nutrition. There's ways to kind of correlate depending on what people eat, what their HRV will do, as mentioned with the wine or any kind of alcohol, but also weed. So a lot of people smoke weed and feel that that gives them, better sleep. Some people actually have a actually inverse relationship between that. Some people do okay with CBD or hemp or something like that. So it's really, I look at medicine as you're kind of like a Sherlock Holmes type person. You're trying to really find the nuance in people and see what is it that they're doing that you can make small changes so that they can be compliant with it, but also really get that benefit in their health. So very similar, I would say, in terms of what I look at.
Thanks, John. Alice, what about from you, from the trenches? What do you see out there as kind of like the things that really generally move the needle, where you'll start with, and then any of the things that kind of surprise you, where you're like, hey, we tried X and it worked like a champ?
Yeah, I think, there's so many different things that we can touch on, both like John and Sachin mentioned, but I think one thing that I've seen very commonly, especially over this past, 2 years nearly, is that a lot of people, of course, spend more time indoors. So that's something that I try to focus on, and, in front of screens, especially late at night. So whenever the day is done, you come home, if you have kids, put them to bed, and then your wind down or decompression time is typically in front of a blue light screen that's now destroying your REM sleep. And that I find to be wildly common amongst a lot of people joining the program, and just people in general, outside of the program as well. So that's something that I try to place a really heavy emphasis on, because, they wake up and they're like, oh yeah, I'm just not a morning person. I'm never, energetic and super bright eyed and bushy in the mornings. That's just me. But, we take it a step back, and once they start wearing the ring, we are able to, check out their deep sleep, check out their REM sleep. And, no surprise, it's usually bottomed out, or it's on the very low end of the spectrum. So I try to really give them actionable and enjoyable steps to start reversing that, so that they're not waking up tired, so that they have energy, to show up better at work, to show up better for their family, to show up better for themselves. So that's a really big pain point that I've realized. And then additionally, spending more time outside, because of, depending on where you're situated geographically, depending on the seasons, it's still extremely important to get outside, get some fresh air, unplug from all the tech, unplug from the screens, have some decompression time, take a walk and just reflect on your day, be with yourself, don't be distracted, and don't decompress in ways that are actually, activating that sympathetic state in your body. So, watching something that's action-packed or gory, or even, watching or reading the news at night, all of that impacts your sleep. But it's all stuff that we've been doing, I think, ramped up for the last 2 years. So it's trying to ramp that back down, focus on more productive ways of decompressing, de-stressing, and understanding, when your body feels its best, when you are able to wake up with tons of energy, when you are able to keep up with all the obligations and responsibilities that you have throughout the day, and do it, with more cheer and with more joy in your day. So that's one of the biggest things that I like to focus on.
Yeah, I think there's just a lot there. Everyone's lifestyle has taken pretty much a mandatory change. Like you said, you're just indoors a lot more, and by consequence, connected to screens a lot more. And a huge part of our sympathetic and parasympathetic balance and tone is being outside in nature. And Sachin, you dropped another gem on the podcast, which is the term I hadn't heard before, and it's called autonomic pairing, which is thinking about what situation you're in, and then how can you tune your nervous system to said situation. And so an example for me is when I'm waking up and I'm needing to do very focused work, I may be creating an environment that is very stimulating with music, for example, or caffeine or lighting or whatever the case might be. And then there's times where I want to gear down my nervous system because I'm trying to get ready for bed or I'm trying to relax, and I'll use different music. One of my favorite tools is the Apollo Neuro, which is a device that actually uses touch sensation. And you can use that to calibrate nervous system. So I'll change the frequency of the Apollo, change the music, change the lighting. It's actually quite simple to manipulate the nervous system to your settings and surroundings and objectives. So I know you mentioned that concept of pairing, which I thought was really interesting. So as you guys have all said, there's a lot of places this can go. There's lots of ways to tune. The main thing is starting to have some data to work with and starting to learn people's baselines, starting to correlate that with their goals and their health history and incorporating that into the program. So we could probably jam for a while here, but what I'd like to do actually is now kind of bring this home and actually do a demo for people that shows how everything we talked about here works in practice. That's one thing for us to talk about it for 45 minutes, but like, what does it really look like when it's all set up and running? So I'd like to take 5 or 10 minutes on a live demo, and Alice, maybe you can chime in as well as I go through this on how you use it day to day. And then there's a lot of questions coming in on the chat that are directed towards Sachin and Alice and Dr. Lemansky. So time permitting, we'll tackle some of those. But let's jump into actual real life product here.
That's perfect because people have been asking for it, Dave. So you're giving the people what they
Shut
want.
up, Dave. Jesus, just get into the real demo here. Is that what you're telling me, TJ?
Save the best for last.
Does he ever shut up?
No.
I'm kidding. All right. So for those who haven't used our product before, this is the heads up login for a coach or a provider or whomever the case might be. And this is one of my test accounts. And there's different rings connected to said test account. First thing you notice is you've just got a way to log in and immediately start to get some biofeedback from individuals. And you can see I've set up a dashboard that has some of the common Oura metrics: heart rate variability, morning readiness, temperature deviation, and there's others you can put on here. But you may also be monitoring other biomarkers on people. You may want to look at indicators of physical activity. For example, you may have people looking at blood pressure. You may have people tracking blood glucose. So this can be customized however you choose, but there's a couple metrics we can work with. One was temperature deviation that was brought up. And in the era of COVID, where we're at, this is one of the first indicators that's going to start to go off the charts when there's a serious illness coming on, and you'll start to see the temperature deviation go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 degrees, even in some cases. So really, really good leading indicator. Or like Dr. Lemansky mentioned, that there is other underlying infection or other underlying stressor. This will give an indication of temperature. Obviously, the overall algorithm that Oura runs, it's pretty darn good. It takes all the data and gives you a single score. And then you can get into more of the nuanced metrics like HRV and deep sleep. So you've got a place to start. You can come in and immediately sort HRV from highest to lowest or lowest to highest and say, okay, this person's low at 32. You also have their baselines. So you've got to look at this contextually. 32 might actually be really good for one client and be terrible for the next client. And that's where you have to have baseline data. So I want to know 32, okay, that's actually up relative to their 7-day trailing baseline. It's about even with their 30-day trailing baseline. It's below their 365-day trailing baseline, and it's below their lifetime baseline. So that's how you can look at an individual number contextualized for each individual person, is by comparing it to baseline, and then you'll know where they're doing and whether an outreach is required. And you can send a person a quick message, say, hey, numbers look fantastic this morning, great job, or take it easy today, feeling okay. So there's opportunities for short, quick engagement using the client table. And then you've got the ability to actually drill down a little deeper. But before we transition off, Alice, anything you'd add here from your day-to-day on like how you're monitoring, how you learn people's baselines, just kind of instinctively, and any other comments from just like the quick interactions that you might use day-to-day?
Yeah, I love this like kind of dashboard, this front page, because it really does give you a bird's eye view, especially if you have, quite a few people that you're checking on a daily basis. You can kind of get a quick synopsis of what's been going on, like you mentioned, if it's out of their normal range, because HRV is quite a spectrum. So some people, 32 could be amazing, whereas for others, that could be really concerning. So you're able to see that baseline there and reach out accordingly as needed. And then additionally, AM readiness is really important. I feel like that definitely gives me a better idea as to how somebody's overall sleep, their overall readiness is for that day. And if that number is kind of trailing in the lower ends, then I know I need to do more of a deeper dive, see exactly, where I can provide coaching depending on what can be improved, what is looking great, and provide that feedback in real time. So I think AM readiness is a really, really great marker to kind of identify that. And then as well, temperature deviation, that's a great one, especially for right now, with the pandemic, with COVID, being able to warn somebody like, hey, are you feeling a little under the weather today? Make sure to rest, make sure to, get some time to go outside, take it easy, focus on better nutrition, get to bed earlier. So, I don't believe that there's one greater marker than another. All of them are extremely important when it comes to overall encompassing health, but just as a quick overview, AM readiness and HRV are the two that I kind of like to check out.
Awesome. So now let's look at how all this data comes in. You're also familiar with this, Alice, but let's dive into a sample account here. And I'll show you. So obviously the individual client has to connect their Oura to HeadsUp. That's just a part of the process to get the data flowing. And the way that works is you get the ring, you download the Oura app, you create your account. That's all pretty standard. And then you would come in here and the client would come in and they would link their Oura to the HeadsUp dashboard. So you would just click on it and the person puts in their username and password. You'll see that there's a green check, which means the Oura is connected. They can connect other devices as well. I won't get into that. As soon as they do that, you'll be able to build a dashboard for said client. And Alice, to your point, we've got HRV, morning readiness, time of sleep. This one's going to give you some insights into when they're actually going to bed. You can actually see the bedtime and the wake time here. So Sachin and Dr. Lemansky have all mentioned circadian rhythm. Even just understanding what time a client goes to bed at night can be really insightful into why they're responding or not responding. So you'll be able to create these metrics and mash it up with other metrics as well. Really, this, again, to Alice's point, starts to give individuals the real-time feedback on their own health. And with our dashboard, you can incorporate other metrics on here related to things like weight. Sachin, I know you mentioned, and Alice as well, when HRV starts to improve and stress starts to come down, weight starts to just naturally come off. And actually having a way to measure that is incredibly empowering for people to see, wow, when I get my stress under control, I just lose weight. My blood sugar is down, weight is coming off. They start to get a sense of the whole systemic approach. So that's how the actual client can start to look at this. And then what Alice mentioned was actually running reports on a monthly basis. This is where we can validate the program and validate that everything is working properly. So I might want to come in here and look at nocturnal HRV over the past month, and we will automatically compare that to the prior month. And so this individual's gone from 37 roughly to 30 in the last 30 days. That's a decrease of 16%. And we may also want to look at what's happening with other biomarkers. For example, I might want to look at blood glucose, for example, from the Keto Mojo and see if blood sugar has trended up month on month. And blood sugar is actually down 10%. And we might also want to look at things like physical activity. So we can really start to get a look into what's happening lifestyle-wise. And then this report can also, it doesn't have to be a month. You could do a year, you could compare quarter on quarter. It starts to give you some insights into how people are doing. This to me, Alice, is when you can show someone you're way ahead of your baseline when you started with us. Like you can punch in the date the client started the program and then run a report over the next 6 months and say, you were at 24 on your HRV when you started with us. And now you're like at 40. Like everything we're doing is working. That just makes it all real. And then you can actually give them the report and share it with them. And this is something they'll have that they can refer back to. And I know you do a lot of this type of month-on-month reporting, Alice. Anything you'd add?
Definitely HRV is one of the biggest ones. If sleep was something that was a large pain point with them, I like to include that, things like REM sleep, especially if they do have a history of staying up, watching TV, being in front of blue light. That's something that I definitely want to highlight. And I typically recommend that, before they embark on the program, that they wear the ring for a few days, a week, if they possibly can.
Yep.
Yeah, a week if they possibly can, just to get that baseline, prior to even beginning the program. So then they have, their baseline there and ready, and they can revert back to it and know where they don't want to be, moving forward and afterwards when they've done the work on their health as well. So I like to walk them through this report and exactly like you've shown, show them that, your HRV has doubled in the last month. Sometimes it's even tripled just by,
Awesome.
Eating in a not stressed out state, being more mindful, being more present, switching out some of the foods that they're even using, switching to whole foods, very anti-inflammatory. And you just see that number skyrocket because it's something that they haven't been consistent with in the past. And what this does is it incentivizes, within themselves that they see that progress is being made. They don't need me to tell them, to do these things. They understand now that it's important for themselves and that it's being reflected in their bodies within their own health and just how they're overall feeling. So I think it's extremely helpful to just be able to show them that this is a resource, regardless of if I'm, with them checking it out every single day, that moving forward in life, they're able to now use this platform and able to assess and be their own interpreters, and be their own health advocates, which is something that I'm really proud to help facilitate and be alongside of. So, downloading the reports and being able to hand them off to the clients so that they can, sometimes they even brag to like family and friends, regardless of if family and friends even understand what's going on themselves, they're just so proud and excited of their accomplishments. And so it just creates really great positive feedback and commitment as well.
And you're doing this analysis with a client on Zoom right in front of their eyes. So you're showing them how to run these reports on their own. This isn't something that has to come from you. This is a tool that's also available. So you're showing them real time how to do this, also sending them the reports. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So I'm going to stop the demo here. Just hopefully that gives you some insights. There's a lot more to the Heads Up system, but I really just wanted to show the basics of connecting the device, getting the data flowing, starting to do the review. So with that said, we're right at the top of the hour here. So TJ, are there any questions that have come in that you want to call out here?
Yeah, great question. There were a few that if you have to hop off right now, we understand it's the top of the hour, but if you have 5 or 10 minutes to stay on, we'll close out with a few more questions. And thanks for filling out that poll, by the way. I think 75% of you filled it out, and there's lots of excitement and interest. Most of you have Oura rings. So we'll put another a link in the chat box as well if you did indicate that you were one of the people interested in setting a follow-up call with us. And now that you've seen a taste of the platform that Dave just shared with you, that's a good transition point, Dave. One of the questions is, what other services can be used by this platform? So Ross Carter is asking, I'm wondering, maybe he's referring to like other devices or other data types that can be added.
Yeah, we work really hard to keep our support matrix updated with the latest and greatest in digital health. And if you go to headsuphealth.com/integrations, you'll see every device we support and every metric we pull from said device. And we constantly get requests from our customers on what else they want us to integrate. And we log all of that feedback and we set our roadmap accordingly. In some cases, when we're working with large organizations, we have to do integrations just directly for them that we would not otherwise support in the product. And then a lot of the reporting that individuals do doesn't come from devices. It can come from it doesn't have to be a connected device. If the person's got a perfectly good blood pressure cuff that's not wireless, they can punch it in every morning. And in some cases, that's actually a better fit for a low-tech client. Rather than having them fuss with Bluetooth and apps, it's like, just take your blood sugar and send me a text message. So data can be entered manually. There's no requirement. And then a lot of the information is also subjective metrics. So for example, you may set up a metric for an individual to report subjective pain or mood or energy levels. And so those can be set up as well to gather subjective feedback. And then we also do a lot of work integrating laboratory data. And that would be conventional blood work and functional blood work. So those are the main types of inputs that come in. And then we can build any types of reports and analytics on top of that you wish.
Great answer. Perfect. Yeah, there's been other questions that Chuck has been helpful to answer. There's some questions around different sleep algorithms from the Oura Ring. And so Chuck, thank you for being on those in the chat box. If you do have any other questions, I know Veronica, you were raising your hand. If you had a question, please feel free to put that in the chat box, but no other major ones right now. Ross did ask on more details on uploading blood work. Yeah, great question, Ross. I mean, we can definitely cover that on a call if you do want to grab a time with me. Happy to go over all the options for getting labs on the system, whether you're in the United States or out of the US. We have a lot of international clients, including Sachin and Alice in their practice. So yeah, feel free to grab a time with me.
Well, with that said, I think we'll keep it punctual here today.
Can I add something?
Yeah, please.
And it maybe goes without saying, but there's a gamification opportunity here. So a lot of us may have community-based practices like we do. So there's groups of people. We have, ways that we can reward and celebrate people's wins as well, or give them goals or objectives to reach for. And we all love that. Like, who doesn't like to be celebrated? Who doesn't like to, throw their hat into, the contest to see if they're going to win a prize? So there's ways that we can incentivize and reinforce positive behavior. You can even in your practice trigger certain prizes or rewards individually for the client, right? And say, hey, if we can raise your, and you don't have to do this in an announced way, but if they do raise their HRV, maybe they get a little gift from you, from your practice, and it just up levels their experience and rewards and reinforces, positive behaviors and changes that they're making. So just wanted to throw that in there as well for those of you that are looking to create a more unique user experience where we're celebrating people's wins and encouraging them to keep going, because they may not have that in their life elsewhere.
Yeah, that's actually a nice segue, Sachin. I forgot to mention one of the new features that we're working on is exactly that, which is to be able to run challenges. And I'll just briefly do one more share here. This is in the bowels of engineering right now, so it's not released to the world. But this is where, Alice, you'd be able to come in and say, show me all clients over the last 30 days. And how did the whole practice do over the last 30 days relative to the prior 30 days? Or you may want to tag certain clients. So Sachin, for example, if you tagged a certain cohort of users based on when they enrolled or what their goals are. You can see I have tags applied here. So you'd be able to run a report just on the individuals with that tag and look at how they've changed month on month, week on week. If I'm running a 1 month competition with, like you said, community based, let's celebrate each other's wins. And I just need to know who's done the best. You know, we're starting to build out the cohort analytics into the product as well. So that's all coming soon. If anyone is on the line and they're interested in using Oura or any device for that matter, we'd be happy to set up a discovery call with you to learn more about your practice and where you're at today, and we can offer some best practices on how to move forward. So with that said, I'd just like to get any closing remarks here from our panelists, and then we'll wrap up in a timely manner. So John, maybe you can just give us a quick summary and closing remarks here.
Yeah, no, that was a great discussion. I wish we had more time. I know there were some questions that weren't answered, so I do apologize about that. But I think HRV is becoming better known in obviously the wellness health space, but also in traditional medicine. Hopefully, my goal with a lot of these webinars is to also bring a lot of the information that comes from alternative health practices to like the mainstream, because I think that's the wave of the future. So I do appreciate Sachin and Alice taking time to discuss how they are able to integrate data into their practice. I think the idea of doing challenges, like we as a Heads Up Health organization, we also do challenges within our team. It's a really good way to kind of, I think, encourage people to get healthy. And you have the data, which is indisputable. It's there. So you can not really, hide from what the data shows. So I know when Dave is on a bender, I know when he's not, when he's traveling, because I see his data. And so it's a really good way to not only just encourage teammates, encourage patient clients to improve on their health, but it's also a very good way of discussing health, which I think is lost in traditional medicine. You can go back and forth, like Alice can talk to her clients and show them in real time, this is the data, this is what it's telling you. And I think people can, grasp that information much better than just, here's your set of labs, everything looks normal, see me in 3 months. So what the people who are on this webinar, I think, are seeing is really the wave of the future for medicine and health. So I just really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you guys.
Yeah, just so everyone knows, we have all of our, we have a Slack channel. We're a remote company. So anytime anybody scores an 85 on the ring, an alert comes in the Slack channel and we celebrate. And it's just positive reinforcement. So it works really good. Alice, your closing remarks here.
I think in order to be able to make sustainable and impactful change, you need to measure certain metrics. So I think that the Oura Ring provides you with, ample amounts of information on different lifestyle markers to tackle and to focus on. And, having that objective data, having those numbers, you then have, again, that baseline. So then you're able to course correct. You're able to, create that awareness and create that connection with your body. And the amazing thing is that it's so unique to you, so, what works for me might not particularly work for you, but now you have this tool that gives you that feedback in real time where you are able to adjust, you are able to try different things and see exactly where you feel your best and see exactly where your body feels your best. So I think that, having that data is priceless, and it just allows you to really dial it in and create that unique lifestyle, unique routines that you need in order to achieve those health goals.
I love it. And I love the fact that you guys, that Alice, as a coach, you can take your skills as a health coach and then combine those with data and then have opportunities to use that for engagement. I personally think that's the gold standard of how to do it, and then work with a big brain like Sachin over there to help with advanced analysis and interpretation. Sachin, closing remarks here, my friend.
Well, first of all, I want to say, thank you to everyone, and thank you to Heads Up Health and your team for continuing to innovate in this space. It's great to see that, you're continuing to upgrade the services and offerings to us, and really appreciative of that. And, it really allows all of us, again, like I said at the very beginning, to hold ourselves to a higher standard, because we're not just waiting for that 90-day blood work to know if what we're doing is working. We know on a day-to-day basis if the recommendations we're making are working, and we can course correct. So having this really short feedback loop holds us accountable, holds a client accountable. And Alice mentioned it allows them to coach themselves. So it reduces the amount of guesswork, and it allows them to take ownership over their health, which is really ultimately the future. And our mantra in our practice is that the doctor of the future is the patient. And, with the technology of Oura and other wearables, and of course the amalgamation of this information through Heads Up Health, you're really ushering that vision that we have in and bringing it into the present time. So I'm grateful for that. And it's exciting to see all the other practitioners here who are also looking for this type of up-leveling of their services and practice. So thank you. Appreciate it.
That was beautifully said, Sachin, and I love the mantra.
Thank you.
Mantras are underrated these days. They're making a comeback though. TJ, any closing remarks before we sign off here?
Yeah, I'm just grateful for everyone being a part of this. Sachin and Alice and Dr. L, thanks for your great insights. And yeah, it was really cool to see how many people already have an Oura ring, so they're personally already aware of this, and there was interest for others to possibly get one. But hopefully we've answered all of your questions. Look for some follow-up emails from us. We'll be in touch. We're excited to stay in the loop, whether you're already a part of our community or new to our community. We're excited to meet you and stay in touch.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.